Okay, we are going to begin our Thursday, November 13th Policy Committee meeting. And we have by remote with us Member Lofold, Communications Director Adele Wellens. And is there somebody else that okay, there's 3 spots, but. Yeah, okay. Okay, so thank you for joining us both. So, as always, we have policies for first reading, and the policy that we have one policy, Policy 905, advertising, and this will replace Policy 1025 and 1030. And the purpose of this policy is to provide guidelines for the advertising or promoting of products or services to students and parents in the schools. And like all of our policies, it goes on to highlight a general statement of the policy and other issues. And then at the end of the policy, the legal references and the cross-references. So the legal references with state statutes and then the cross-references with other policies. And I believe, Simone, you are going to speak towards this policy? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Adele is going to speak towards this policy. Do you want to?
I would say this is a pretty standard policy. It's an MSBA policy. It didn't make any changes other than having us cross-reference our naming rights and naming school facilities policy, which is coming up for review later on, but that's policy 110. I think that the biggest thing that I think is important in this one is the advertising guidelines, section 3, paragraph A, where it says that in no instance shall publications accept advertising or advertising images for alcohol, tobacco, drugs, drug paraphernalia, weapons, or obscene pornographic or illegal materials. So I think that is really important to have that paragraph there on there. Any questions?
Member Michaelsell?
Well, I had my mic on to make sure that we were capturing Adele's comments via the OWL, but I do have just one clarification. I'm noting that in the model policy provided to us by Minnesota School Board Association, they have that note in at the top of their model policy, just recommending that we carefully consider whether we wish to allow advertising in school district facilities or publications. And I was just curious if we've took that into consideration and if after those considerations still felt obviously comfortable bringing that forward, but what kind of conversations may have happened or didn't happen regarding that.
So there was an echo. I really couldn't hear the question. I don't know if someone else has their mic on.
I'll tell you this one because I was trying to make sure I didn't ask the question.
Just real quick, Adele, sorry. At the top of the model policy and that we have in board book, there's that note from MSBA asking, recommending that school districts carefully consider whether they wish to allow advertising in school district facilities or publications. And it goes on with other comments. I was just curious if we took that into consideration as we brought this forward.
Yeah, and we do already do like advertising in our yearbooks. And when we had physical student newspapers, they were already advertising. So it's something that's already occurring within our district. So just having those exemptions in the advertising guidelines is what I think is really needed to make sure that we don't have anything that might be inappropriate in our yearbooks.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And I would also add that some of this language is echoed in some of the other things with our naming rights policies and other things where we talk about ensuring that if there is a product or company that's within a naming rights element, that it's aligned with our philosophy as well and doesn't fall into those same categories of being drug, alcohol, or otherwise negatively indicated. company.
In A, there is also a statement after what Adele read that said advertisements may be rejected by the school district if determined to be inconsistent with the educational objectives of the school district or inappropriate for inclusion in the publication. So that is in there, so that is helpful. I just wonder though, like, who actually approves the advertising that, say, is in a yearbook or, I mean, who looks through to make sure it's consistent with our policy?
Sure. So I think that would be overseen by our athletics and activities director via the advisor that oversees the yearbook. So the yearbook advisor would be the main first one, and then if they had something that was a questionable piece, they would be reviewing it with their athletics and activities director, and if it was still unclear, then it would be brought to Assistant Superintendent Bonds.
So will we make sure that, once we approve this policy, that our activities directors are aware of the policy and, okay,
Yes, we will.
okay, thank you.
So you have means that when policies are updated or newly adopted, that we can communicate through channels. So this one, I would specifically, when approved, send it to the activities directors as well as the yearbook advisors, and just kind of added in the employee newsletter as a reminder that this is our advertising policy.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Looks like Chair Lofel, Member Lofel.
Member Loeffel?
So thanks for that update, and I think in the section of 3A, it also talks about the faculty advisor who's responsible for screening, and you covered that with activities. But you might want to add to this because, there are, think of all the other places that there is potential advertising. I'm thinking of just our theater programs always have, advertising, and you would think our theater directors would know, that if a local bottle shop or even a local bottle shop in our community wants to buy an ad in the program, they would at least not, I just think that theater advisors, because they put together extensive programs that include advertising.
Yeah, and we can make that clear, and when I do send this to the activities directors, it would be please disseminate to any of your clubs or other activities that may do advertising for programs and such.
Okay, any other further questions? Okay, so this is the first reading of the policy. And it would replace 1025 and 1030. Policies for second reading. And again, these three policies, as we talked about when we had the first reading, are new policies. We really had many of these three policies incorporated in other areas, but these really will aligns with the best practices. And so the first policy, again for second reading, is superintendent selection. The purpose of this policy is to convey to the school community that the authority to select and employ a superintendent is vested in the school board. And then again, it goes into general statement, qualifications, selection, the legal references, and the cross-references. Any comments on or additional questions on policy 303? Looked at my notes and there weren't any follow-up from the first reading. Okay. So that'll be on the consent agenda in a few, at our November board meeting. The second policy is policy 304, superintendent contract, duties, and evaluation. The purpose of this policy is to provide for the use of an employment contract with the superintendent, a position description, and the use of an approved instrument to evaluate performance. And again, general statement, legal references. Any questions or comments on policy 304? Okay. The next policy for second reading is policy 306, Administrator Code of Ethics. The purpose of this policy is to establish the requirements of the school board that school administrators adhere to the standards of ethics and professional conduct in this policy in Minnesota law. And it goes into the general statement, the definition of the educational administrator, and then legal references
Member
and
Lawford,
cross-references.
Member Lawford Kemp, there's a question from Member Lawford.
Member Lofold?
Yeah, so I know, I'm just trying to catch up because I just had a question back on policy 304. But I think I can, we're on first readings right now, right?
No, this is the second reading.
So my question just on 304, if I can go back real quick, is just on 2B, when it says set forth in a position description for the superintendent, where do we have that located? I mean, I know it's in contract, but where, when it says the specific duties accountable, set forth in a position description, or is that in policy 303 that we just?
I know that when I applied, there was a job description that was posted, and so I imagine the job description is, like other job descriptions, goes through the approval of the board, similar to other job descriptions that we have, and would be within Human Resources Department. I can take a look.
Yeah. Well, and I know we have that job description within, when we go through your evaluations. We're always given that, but I just wondered where, yeah.
What is your question then?
Just do we have it where if people said, what duties are set forth in a position description for the superintendent? That we know that it's housed in our HR department?
Yeah, I mean, it's housed in the HR department. I think it's been posted on Board Book. It would also be part of the job postings that we've had with links. So and it would be available upon request too from any member of the public if they couldn't find it through the Board Book.
And I know we have used the job description as part of the review process as well.
Right. And I bring this up mainly too for community who are watching us or listening to our policy, that if they're looking at that they know that we know that there is a position description and we see it and they can find it if they are interested.
Thank you.
And then, as long as we're on 306, can I just ask, the Administrator Code of Ethics, is this just pertaining to our superintendent, or is this all of our administrators?
I would say it would pertain to all administrators. And there was a previous request to see if they were in the contracts, and I was looking through some of the contracts, and I don't see specific reference to this policy, but there would be an expectation that all administrators and employees follow all applicable policies and laws. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit more.
Well, and number 11 does say adheres to the Code of Ethics for School Administrators in Minnesota rule. So that would be Minnesota rule, and then it's it's listed here, Minnesota rule part 3512 dot 5200 Code of Ethics for School Administrators. So that's a legal reference.
Thanks for that clarification. Just when it comes after policy 3.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions? And again, this is the second reading, so this will be on our consent agenda.
And actually, I was just doing a little more digging, and I've got a little more information on it. So there is the policy 301, which is school district administration policy, and that says that the board expects that all activities related to school district operations be administrated in manner consistent with the policies of the school board. So there's at least policy saying that we will execute following policy. And so it's also my duty to make sure that things are put into place and following policy as well. So I'm just digging into it a little bit as we go, sorry.
And you're referring to policy 301 that we passed in October.
Yes. And actually, I'm finding that our district chat bot is extremely good at finding information.
Clarifying that. Any other questions? Okay. Then we'll move to policies for review. And again, policies for review are policies that often have had legislative changes or changes that don't change the intent of the policy. And so we just need to review them in one meeting unless we choose to continue to, we have more discussion. So policy for review is policy 516, student. Sorry, I was not on. So policies for review are often because of legislative changes, and we just need to review them once. Or there might be small changes that doesn't change the purpose of the policy. And sometimes it's a name change or address change. But I believe most of the policies for review right now do have our legislative changes. So we'll start with 516, student medication and telehealth. The purpose of this policy is to set forth the provisions that must be followed when administering non-emergency prescription medication to students at schools. And there was a language change from throughout a number of times, adding delivery systems in this policy. And some changes, again, more of a description of administering it under section C, or excuse me, section D, possession and use. And let's see. And again, they were legislative changes which are referenced in the legal references. We did review this policy in February of 2025. We also reviewed and adopted it in 2023 and looked at it a couple different times in depth, and then again reviewed it just in February of this year. Is there any questions or other comments? And I know we have Director Crane here, and he worked a lot on this policy, so would be available for questions. Okay,
Quick question.
okay.
So this all looks just very much wording changes, but there's that one section that talks about the commissioner, the Minnesota Department of Health must provide a district or school with a standing order for distribution of an epinephrine delivery system under the statute. And I was just curious if we've received that as of yet, or if that's a change or just added wording that we already abide by.
Great question. Duluth schools did not, until recently, 2023, have a standard practice of having epinephrine for all staff and students if someone were to have an allergic reaction in schools. But with this policy, we've changed that. And yes, we do have a standing order. One of the concerns we had with supplying our health offices with a standard supply of epinephrine for anyone to use. We do have student-specific epinephrine devices in our health offices and throughout our school buildings, but the cost associated with it, and if I remember correctly, it's a sponsored thing for schools right now, where we're not subject to a large cost. I think it's free for us to ask for these doses to be supplied to our school sites, and they do expire. So Crystal Oker works very closely with our supplies to make sure they're up to date and they don't expire. It's kind of a long-winded answer there, but Crystal was planning on being here tonight to answer any questions and just couldn't come at the last minute. So if needed, I can definitely bring a school nurse to a future meeting if you wanted to expand some content-specific things that nurses would be able to answer much better than I can.
That's not necessary. It was just wanting to make sure that we had everything that the policy states we need to have
Yep.
in order to provide the care. So thank you for that.
Yep.
And Krista was a part of reviewing this policy?
Yeah, we brought it to our nurses, all nurses
Okay.
took a look at the policy. We brought it to TLE and standard practice to bring it to the principal groups as well. So these policies were all brought to those groups for review before we're bringing it before the board.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I just want to say that I'm thankful for the extensive process that we go through with this, because we want to make sure that when it comes to something like, delivering medications or epinephrine or whatever may be through administrated through the policy, that we're making sure that everybody understands practice and protocol, and that we have policies that ensure that every student is safe. We're also working on through our improvement of systems. We're doing some work with our nursing stations on many other things related to making sure that we have common practices, and so that's something that as a system we're really working to make sure that we have continuity with lower degrees of autonomy, but some autonomy based on what a nurse's station in a school might be. But it's important for us to make sure that policies like this are really, all policies need to be looked at very closely and understood throughout the system, but this one in particular, but when it comes to potential life or death situations that could be occurring if it's not followed, it's really, really important for us.
Thank you. And I recall when we worked on this in 2023, there was just a lot of input and a lot of thought put into it at that time as well. So thank you. The follow-up to this policy is 516.5, overdose medication. And the purpose, as a means of enhancing the health and safety of its students, staff, and visitors, the school district will acquire, administer, and store doses of an opiate antagonist, specifically, help me out with pronouncing it, Nexalon, Narcan, and administration, excuse me? Naloxone, thank you, nurse. Narcan and administration devices or kits for emergency use to assist a student, staff member, or other individual believed or suspected to be experiencing an opioid overdose on school district property during the school day. And again, there were a few changes, just one change. That was a legislative change at the end of an addition under 4G. And that was the only change. And again, we reviewed this, or first passed it in May of 2023. Yes, and then we reviewed it again in September of 2023. So any additional comments on this one or questions?
You'll note that the policy has a note from the School Board Association that this is optional. It's a item that's actually made some newsworthy media. Edina School District, when they brought this forward, there was an article in the Minneapolis paper about this policy. Just had some questions out there. And as we brought it to our groups, including our nurses, to our principals, people are really appreciative of having a medication dose more widely used or more widely accepted to be able to save lives. And if you do administer naloxone to a person who doesn't necessarily need it, it's not harmful. It's not going to cause any reactions to a person who might not be in distress. So I think the people that reviewed this from the Duluth school perspective appreciated keep it in, even though it's optional. It makes good sense to make it very public that Duluth Schools supports this, because we're saving lives.
Thank you. Just one question on, I know this was a question when we reviewed it in the past, under definitions B, who the coordinator is. The one that references coordinator. Under definitions B.
Yeah, I would interpret that. Crystal Oker does a lot for dosages and making sure that they're, right now, the most common site for this naloxone for district storage is in our AED devices, which is out in the hallway right there. We have one right now. And that's where we supply our doses of naloxone in storage. And that is trained yearly on that information and monitored quite closely by our nurses in each of our school buildings.
Thank you. Member Michaelsell?
And apologies if I just haven't read through everything completely to answer my own question, but as we look at that new wording that we're optional and able to add, which allows students in the in grades 9 through 12 to possess and administer an opioid antagonist, that's referring to something that they might be bringing in from outside of the school. Is that correct in that interpretation?
A 9th through 12th grade student may have that on their possession in the school building.
But we also offer it in the school building is that only for staff to access? Or if someone who was in a high school recognized that someone might be having an overdose, a student could access that from the AED box?
To my knowledge, we train our staff to administer and respond to that. I'm not aware that we train all students on that. I could check into that, but that's a great question.
Yes, please, just for fun. But then I was trying to think back at some of our other curriculum updates. If I know we are required to be teaching CPR to our students, but is there any kind of education that goes around Narcan administration for students at that grade level?
I'd have to check on that to be able to more eloquently answer that question. We do have several things that we do for training for students in the school setting. Before I want to answer that, I'd want to check on some detailed information.
And obviously, it's not going to stop me from wanting to pass this, at our next school board meeting, since it's only for review, but it would just be interesting to make sure, or to hear how our students are being engaged with this information.
I'm a health teacher myself, so I kind of know what grade levels certain content gets covered, including the puberty talk and things like that. I could imagine this is not discussed in early grades in elementary, but when appropriate, it might get introduced as a conversation point in high school health classes, as an example. Let me check on the information and get back to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Member Lowfoot.
Thanks, everybody.
The next policy is 534, school meals policy. The purpose of this policy is to ensure that students receive healthy and nutritious meals through the school district's nutrition program, and that school district employees, families, and students have a shared understanding of expectations regarding meal charges. The policy of the school district is to provide meals to students in a respectful manner and to maintain the dignity of students by prohibiting such lunch shaming or otherwise ostracizing the student. The policy seeks to allow students to receive nutrition they need to stay focused during the school day and minimize identification of students with insufficient funds to pay for à la carte items or second meals, as well as to maintain the financial integrity of the school nutrition program. And again, there were some legislative changes that are highlighted, and clarification about our free breakfast and lunch to all students enrolled in the district. So there was mainly just kind of clarification, also on students purchasing a second breakfast or a second lunch. Any additional comments you'd want to make on the school meals policy?
Not at this time. Sheila Oak went through this and did a really good job. My question for you is, as I'm reading this too, where it says no, while subparagraph 3 above is inherent, given subparagraph 2, MSBA recommends, that language there, has that been added, or what, when does that get changed?
That's just a note that is
Okay.
in there for the school board to see when they're considering the changes, but when we adopt the policy, the notes get taken out.
They did, okay, perfect, thank you. No, I read through this several times, and I feel Sheila did a great job on it.
And we last reviewed it and adopted it December 20th, 2022. And of course, there were changes made by the state funding our lunch program, so we are thankful for that. Any other comments?
I just want to say thank you to our child nutrition staff, because there's so much to keep track of with all of this, and it's a big, big job, so please thank
you.
them.
I'll pass that on. They're amazing.
We really appreciate the reports that Sheila provides us as well every month with the numbers. For review is policy 8. Sorry, I keep forgetting to turn my mic back on. Policy 810, naming rights and naming school facilities. The purpose of this
Before we move
policy.
on, there was a question from, it appears to be Member Lofold.
Member Lofold?
Yeah, there must be a delay in all of that. I just had a question, quick, about the last red, now I have to call it back up. The last note after E, where it says if we're not, are we not collecting any debt from our students, if they've got a school lunch debt, so that we don't need an addendum or an added F to this policy on school meals?
If there is a balance, it is sent to us, and it does first go to an outside organization to collect. But the balance is very low. It's the lowest it's been in over 4 years. So we don't send the students to make the collect from their families, but we do send letters out, and so does Sheila's office. Did that answer your question?
Well, it does answer my question, but then the policy, I don't know why MSBA would suggest that we would want to add a paragraph about how we address that to this policy, unless we have it in another policy.
I think it's addressed in the other areas under the unpaid meal charges in B through E. I think it already addresses it. I think that note is saying is if we use a collection agency, and I'm not positive that we use a collection agency.
It does, we do eventually.
Oh, you do
yes.
eventually?
It is pretty specific, though, under Section 4, unpaid meal charges, and C and D. So if you look there, and it does reference debts are turned over to the credit agency for collection. So it is referenced, Jill, Member Lofold.
Yep, I
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to 8:10, naming rights and naming school facilities. The purpose of this policy is to establish the criteria and procedures for granting naming rights in relation to school district facilities, including buildings and grounds. And we last adopted this May of 2021. And Simone, did you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, and Adele is also available for any questions. She's the one who, she and I discussed this, and we both felt that the policy met our needs. We did go through this one time when we renamed the stadium and the field down at Denfeld, and we followed it very carefully. It was very well outlined, and we felt that we didn't need to see any changes on there. Adele, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I think it did go really well last time, although, the last time we used this, we didn't use it for any, possible naming rights due to monetary donations. So that part hasn't been tested, but if we do ever get to that point, then we would, if we make changes. So, as of right now, I think it works really well. It says exactly the things that can be named, and I think it lays out how an educational building would be renamed. So as we all know, we have the First Street built out, so we'll be going through this process regarding the First Street build out. And one of those things that it does have is having, if it's an educational building, having students on the committee to select the new name. And so me and Simone had talked about inviting AOC and AEO students on.
I was just going to reiterate similarly that we'll have an opportunity in the very near future with the First Street build-out, the building that we've referred to quite often as the former D&T building. And I know that we really would like to get that process started soon so that we can be ready as we put together signage for the building opening in August. So we will want to get working on that together.
Thanks. I also think as you're thinking about who to be inclusive with our adult basic ed students. Okay, any other comments? Any other comments? Okay. Okay, so now we're ready to review the 4000 series, and these are policies for consideration of deletion. And we're going to go through them just like we did the other series, just kind of one by one. And Patty will highlight what she recommends in terms of deletion or not. So I'll turn it over to Patty.
And I apologize, as I mentioned earlier, that I need to leave early, but have a good evening. Thanks for the 4000 policy series work.
And I'm just going to give a quick explanation. We actually have a social work student here that is observing our policy meeting, and we have the policies we're reviewing either fall into some other policies, and we've switched over from 1,000 series to 100 series. So that's kind of what's going on right here, just a little bit for your background. We're not just totally deleting policies. Okay.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me all right? Do I have it close enough? Okay, so the first policy for consideration for deletion is 4000 General Human and Community Resources and Relations Policy. This policy, when I looked at it and reviewed it, it's outdated in a lot of its terminology. I think it's talking about the Human Resources Department, but we don't even call it that anymore. And I think some of the things that are covered in this policy could be considered covered in 401 Equal Employment Opportunity and 402 Disability of Non-Discrimination Policy. So at this time, I recommend that my recommendation would be to delete it, but of course, all of these are up for discussion, and you don't have to always go with my recommendation.
Any questions on this policy? Member Michaelsell?
I concur with Secretary Pickett.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so then our next one is 4005, school district employees identification. Again, I felt this was kind of an outdated policy. I think the terminology is outdated. I think we use certified and non-certified now instead of classified and licensed. And I was curious, do we actually need a policy just on a definition? So when I was looking at that, I thought if the terminology is outdated and if we don't need a policy just for that specific identification, that it is possible we could delete this one as well.
I just had one question in the third paragraph there, where it says licensed employees, are those required to hold a current license by the State Department of Education? And is that part of the job descriptions anyways and contracts often?
Yes.
Okay, so it's covered there as well. Okay.
So are you okay with deleting that one? Okay. All right. So our next policy is 4025 standards of conduct for personnel. Let's see, what are my notes on this one? So, when I was looking at this policy, a lot of what is covered in here is also covered in our employee handbook. And there's a section called Working as Professionals in our employee handbook that kind of covers some of these things. And then they also cover the Code of Ethics for Minnesota teachers in the employee handbook. And then when we were talking about that Code of Ethics for administrators, that might be something to consider adding to the employee handbook, whereas then those things would be covered in there and we wouldn't necessarily have to have a policy on it. Thoughts?
Any questions? Member Loeffel? Excuse me, Member Michaelsell? Member Michaelsell?
Two things. So the employee handbook, I think, is a great resource and a reference point. I noticed as I was looking through that employee handbook that it's dated 2020 to 2021, so it's a few years old and not necessarily up to date. So I look forward to hearing what the process and progress will be on getting that updated. And I recognize that there are some portions in there that talk about standards of conduct for our personnel. The part that I am interested in, if we need to have further conversation about, I'm trying to remember, and I was curious if it was even legal, where it was talking about accepting, school district employees should not accept employment in other areas that would be a conflict of interest with our school district. And I just wasn't sure how much we as a district get involved in outside employment of employees.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and we could wait on deleting it. I was thinking, it's my understanding that there are employees that have outside employment, and so it makes me wonder if that's just outdated information, because this is from 1999 was the last time it was updated, and so I don't really know if we can, I mean, I can understand the conflict of interest part, but I just don't know if we can limit people's ability to have other jobs, but we can look into that more and keep this one for now unless,
I'm not saying that we need to keep it.
Okay.
It was just one of those things, like, should we even have it right now?
right, I feel it's antiquated, and I don't really know if we have the right to tell people they can't have other jobs. I mean, I can understand you can't have it impact your primary job, but, yeah.
I do have a question, though, about the updated employee handbook. Do you know where the process on that is?
Well, we're in the process of hiring an executive director, and so I think that would be one thing that we will definitely start working on once an executive director's been hired.
So are we in agreement that we could move to delete this? Member
I
Lofold?
would agree with that. When looking at our employee handbook, Member Mikesell or Executive Secretary Paquette, even though it's dated 2021, 2022, is it substantially covering things in this policy?
It's covering the two things that I pointed out. They have a section called Working as Professionals that explains how they should be adhering to conduct as a professional. And then it also talks about the code of ethics for teachers. And then we are bringing forward for the second reading to approve the code of ethics for administrators. So I think we might want to consider adding that to that employee handbook. So I do think it does kind of cover, conduct of personnel, of how they should behaving in a professional setting.
Okay,
I'm good, thanks.
thank you.
Okay, so our next policy is 4030, consultant services performed by employees. This one I felt like I needed to do a little more research on. I couldn't really find a lot of information around this, and so I will leave it up to you if you think we should delete it, but we might want to keep it until we do some more research. And if it's something that we want to keep, we might want to consider renumbering it.
I guess I would say, let's do more research on it.
Okay. Okay, and then it brings us to 4036R, which is a regulation. I know normally we put regulations under there, but since we're having discussions about all of them, I just put them all in the same grouping. This was actually just missed when we adopted policy 416, which is like our drug, alcohol, cannabis policy. And all of this is covered within that policy and in the attachments that go along with that policy. So I just recommend we delete this. I think it was just missed.
I support that.
I support that too. Member Lofold?
Yep, I support that. Thanks, Patty, for catching that.
Then our next policy is 4045, recruitment, selection, and assignment of professional personnel. And it also has a regulation that goes with it, 4045R. I kind of went back and forth in my mind about whether or not we should delete these or keep them. I think it's probably outdated, what's in here currently. It's my understanding before Director Severance left that she was working on a new recruitment policy. So I'm thinking maybe we want to, so it's possible we might want to keep these till we get a new executive director that follows up on that work.
I agree. Let's
Yeah.
keep this one.
Yep, and then we'll
now.
revisit it at that time once a new person can get caught up to speed.
I support that. Member Lofold, Member Michaelsell?
Yes, I support that as well.
Okay, awesome. Okay, our next policy is 4060, personnel records. When I was reading this policy, the first 6 lines to me read more like a procedure than it does a policy. And then when I got to the Minnesota State Statute, 15.162 to 15.168. Part of that statute numbers have been repealed, or part of them have been renumbered. The part where it talks about written requests, that number's changed, so that would need to be updated. And then when I was looking through bargaining contracts, a lot of them put the verbiage in there of all these steps of what an employee has to do, that they have the right to inspect their personnel files, that it has to be done by written request. So it seems kind of redundant to me, since it's already in contracts, to have it in this policy too. And then at the end, where it says personal records of all deceased, and et cetera, I think that's probably referenced in our records we would follow the records retention schedule for keeping those things. So with those things that I found in my research, I would recommend deleting this one.
Just have a question. You referenced that a lot of this is in contracts, but what about our employees who aren't contracted employees? Where would be,
Like individual contracted employees?
not all of our employees have are a part of a bargaining unit. Most are, we
Okay.
recognize that. But you referenced that, and so
Yeah.
I just don't want anyone to slip through the cracks. Is this a follow-up to what I'm asking, Member Michelson?
It sure is.
Okay, great.
One thing I noticed when I was looking through the Minnesota School Board Association's Model Policy Handbook is that there exists a policy that we don't currently have in place, number 406, which is public and private personnel data. And that may
Yes.
cover a lot of this that's not located in our contracts or in, our regulations and procedures that we have in HR, and that might be a good substitute for this policy.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I have a note right here, possible cross-reference 406. And so I'm glad you remembered that. And so we should hang on to this until we adopt 406.
Yes, I think that makes sense.
Okay, so then our next policy is 4075, evaluation of professional staff. MSBA did a possible cross-reference of 302, but I don't think that really applies. But I kind of lumped all these evaluation ones together because I don't know if we necessarily want to delete them yet. We might want to revamp them and maybe just do one policy about different evaluations for different employee groups and update it to more current practice. So I kind of have them sitting here as, I just don't know if we're ready. Because I didn't really find anything anywhere else that covers evaluations.
I would recommend then we keep it. Member Lofold or Member Michelson?
I recognize that, we do talk about evaluation in our probationary teacher evaluation policy 428, 301, our school district administration policy, and our superintendent has the authority to do the work of the district, which I would assume includes evaluation of our staff. But also I noted that within our DFT contracts, or our contract with our teachers union, there's a lot of language around our teacher development and evaluation plan. And you can see that in the staff section of our website. But I didn't recognize in other contracts if there's other set evaluation plans or programs. So I agree that there might need to be further conversation with our bargaining units, but then also with human resources on how much we want to get into the procedural portions of how that exists versus allowing the people in charge of the management to do their thing.
Member Lofold?
I really love the points and the support that Member Meixel has, and I agree with that. I still think we could delete this policy because I believe that, one, when it says professional staff, it's really vague as to who that's talking about, and if you read it, I think it, at least in my perspective, it reads like that's about teachers, and I just think we have enough in the other policies you stated and in our DFT union contract, and I would imagine it might even be in that employee handbook about evaluation procedures, but I wouldn't be opposed if you want to keep it, but I think you could delete this. I think there's other coverage for it in case you're worried about something not being followed or have a support.
I guess I would want someone from HR to also look at this to make sure it's all followed. And, recognizing we're in transition there.
I would agree with that one as well, for
4075.
475, as well as I'm getting ahead, but even, well, I'll wait to that one. So I agree, this one probably we should keep this one for now.
Is everyone in agreement? Okay. All right, so the next one, oh, wait, did I skip one?
Looks like it's 485.
Oh, 4085. I had one on here that is already deleted. That's why I was getting confused on my type list. So, yeah, I think, with all these evaluation ones, I'm thinking keep. Okay. All right, great.
I would agree. But I did have a question just in general about 4085, the tenured teacher evaluation. That's a pretty kind of standard process, isn't it? I mean, has that changed much?
It's a standard process, but there has been recent state statutes and legislation that has passed as of late, so I think we need to make sure that we are current with statute and so forth, so that's why we should hold on to this one for now.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm in agreement on that. So we're going to keep 4075, 4085, and 4090.
Correct. So that brings us to 4095, student teachers, and this is covered in the employee handbook, so I recommend we delete it.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
In agreement? Okay. 4100, exchange teachers. I couldn't find any information about that, so I think we should do more research and come back to this one.
Do we have exchange teachers?
We do at the Spanish immersion program.
And then the next one, 4105, job sharing, the same thing. I couldn't find it anywhere else, and so I think we should hold off on this one as well. Then when we get to 4115, professional leaves, this is kind of outdated information. It's covered in the employee handbook, what to do and how you can have professional leaves. So I think we can delete this one.
Okay. Delete? Okay.
Then 4120, contractual leaves without pay. How it lists it here, I've looked in collective bargaining agreements, and it's worded exactly like it is here within collective bargaining agreements, so I think it's already covered, and so I think we can delete this one too.
Again, that would be for employees who have contracts, but in the employee handbook, does it cover employees who don't have contracts, this same language?
I don't have it written that this was in the employee handbook. I
Oh.
just saw it in contracts. And in this policy, it says with the collective bargaining agreement. So this policy actually doesn't necessarily cover
Okay,
employees that aren't in bargaining agreements.
then that does make sense. We can delete being it is specific.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then 4125, other leaves of absence without pay. This one I wasn't comfortable deleting yet either. We need to do more. It covers a lot of different leaves that aren't really covered, like religious observance leaves and short-term leaves, so I didn't feel confident to delete this one.
Okay.
Then when I got to 4130, the mid-career leaves of absence, the same sort of thing. I think we need to do more research on this one. I do know that the statute that's currently listed has been renumbered to a different statute, so if we do end up keeping it, when we update it, we'll have to change that number or whatever we decide, once we do more research on it.
Member Loeffler-Kemp, one thing to note is that this policy is referenced in the principal's contract. So as we're looking through all that, just if we need to update the principal's contract next time, they're up for that to be updated, to just look and see if we maintain this or not.
Okay. So are we keeping that one? Okay. Then 4135 MSBA said a possible cross-reference could be 302. And this one, I thought maybe it was kind of outdated when it talks about the school district should not discriminate in favor or against applicants or employees because they're related. We actually have our own policy 426 called nepotism, so that's covered in that policy. And then, I don't know, it says all salaries and wages shall be set in accordance with established wage and salary schedule. Well, that's kind of outdated because our collective bargaining contracts set the wages, and then for hourly employees and substitutes, you guys approve that every year. So I think we could delete this one.
Comments? We
I
did
agree.
Spent a lot of time on that nepotism policy when we passed it. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to delete 4135.
I agree.
Okay.
So then there's a regulation attached to that, so maybe I should have considered that before I said that, but would that would mean the regulation would be deleted too? But like, this is outdated, like, it's not even called a human and community resources. There's just a lot of outdated.
So one of the things I just was curious about when I was looking over the regulation is it did have a section on the interview team, and that's a question we get a lot. And so is that covered some other place? Thank you for dancing there, Mr. Bonds, to get it going. Yeah. So under the 4135R classified personnel procedures, there's a huge section on interview teams. And I'm just curious, do we have that covered in some other language or regulation on what interview teams look like? In this case, it talks about administrators leading the teams.
Well, and I'm curious too, would like the interview, yeah, I don't, if it kind of reads as a process, would that process be held in our Human Resources Department? And should we maybe keep 4135 and 4135R until we get more clarification about the interviewing part?
Yes, that's how I was going to suggest, that we hold on to this one, because it varies, and so we need to, we want to be clear in what is communicated on and within policy, so let's hold on to this one for.
So we're going to bring back 4135, the policy, as well as the regulation?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
So then our next one is 4140, civil service employees. Yeah, this was another one where I felt like it's just really outdated, in that it's covered by our collective bargaining agreements. And it does say specifically in their collective bargaining agreements, so.
In our collective bargaining agreements, does it reference the civil service rule? Because remember, we have that unique relationship with the city, civil service.
I'm not sure. Let me see if I can look real quickly.
I would offer a recommendation. At this point, I know Patty has done a really good job of really trying to identify policies for us, especially ones that we could easily remove. At this time, though, even though some of the ones that are remaining, I just feel it's probably best if we hold on just until we have more opportunities to have conversations with HR department on some of these policies, just so we can, be focused on those details like you're describing, Member Lawful Kemp. And so I would be remiss not to say, let's hold tight on 4140 and others, unless you see one, unless you have a suggestion, Patty, of one that is clear that we probably could eliminate, that wouldn't require a lot of,
Yeah. Yep. I'll just keep,
consideration.
I'll just keep going down the thing, and I'm perfectly fine with keeping, I'm not taking offense for differing of opinion, and I just want to throw it out there with the knowledge that I've acquired with trying to do the research and come to the collective decision of what the best solution is at this time. So, yeah, we can
And
keep,
in terms of the process, as we talked about when we started just bringing together a full series, that this would happen, that it's more to, if we know some are clear to delete, we can, but any concern, desire to have more review, that is what we want to happen, so.
Exactly, thank you.
Yeah.
so the 4145 employee assistance one, this one I think we can delete because we have an employee assistance program through our benefits department, and it's referenced in our employee handbook, and it's also on our staff side of our website. So when staff log into the staff section of our website, the very first thing that pops up is the EAP and how they can access it and use it and what they can use it for. And so I don't know if we need a policy about it because it's in the handbook and it's all through our benefits department. It's something we offer as a benefit to our employees. And the way that it talks about it here, I'm not sure if that's the way that it works now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess that was my question, Patty, because it gets further into, like, if someone does seek care or is recommended to seek care by their employer or supervisor, it gets into some, deep weeds of case review committee on whether or not they can be meeting their contractual demands and that kind of a thing. So it would be really interesting to hear from our human resources group to see what that process is like for employees that may elect to use some of the assistance programs that the district provides. Not saying that this is out of date, this also could also very well be out of date, but just wanting to make sure that we're not removing something that we need to have. It would just be good to have a little bit more information on it.
Yeah,
just
and
from
I
a
can
general
definitely
point of view.
follow, and maybe even benefits might be a good starting part for that one, because they would know more about the process.
And we did have, but it's been a couple of years when we had a update on kind of the employee assistance program. So I think that would be good to, I would second keeping it for now.
Okay. And then 4150, employees, organizations, the statute that's referenced, 179.66 subdivision 10, has actually been repealed. So if the statute that it's tied to has been repealed, I would recommend deleting it.
I also feel comfortable deleting this one only because our employees' right to organize is covered under PERLA, the Public Employees Labor Relations Act. And that's a federal, well, for now, it's a federal rule. So I feel like we have this covered in other places.
Member Loeffel, did you have any comments on this one, or are you in agreement we can delete this one?
Nope, you can delete it. I'm just kind of looking at the last paragraph, but I'm fine with deleting it.
Okay, and then when we get to 4155, pay for substitute teachers and temporary classified personnel, we do that hourly substitute pay rates every year that the school board approves. So I don't know if you want to keep a policy on that, or if you want me to bring this back to HR to look at it further, but HR does bring that to you each year for approval for the pay rates for those positions.
Member Loeffel?
So I would recommend to delete mainly because I think that having a policy that somewhat ties to a pay scale would need to be revised every time we recontract it. I would see that more contractually, and I know that there's other HR documents that address these items.
Okay. Member Michael?
I agree with what's been stated already.
So was that decision to delete it?
Was there another policy that, besides it being covered in the ways we've just talked about, was there any other policies that reference this in our 100th series?
Not that I don't have a note of a policy, so.
But long-term subs and salaries referenced in our teachers' contracts and general information about substitute teachers and other non-certified personnel who are substitutes is also included in the employee handbook.
Okay, so then we'll delete that one.
Then the next one is 4160, employee recognition and/or memorials. This is a policy that that we've had, and I think we should keep this policy and just renumber it.
Would we want to check to see if there's any other policy in the 100 series that it could be?
There are no other, from what I've done, there are no other policies that kind of cover memorials, and I've actually had other school districts reach out to us to find out what our memorial policy is, so I don't think it's a common one that's out
Okay.
there, and since we have one, and it has been referred to before, that's why I suggest just renumbering it.
Okay.
And I support Patty's suggestion on this one as well.
And I would renumber it to a policy in the 400 series, and I was considering 429, if I remember correctly.
I would support that. Member Loeffel?
I support that too. Thank you.
So that'll be brought forward, and we would just have one review for it.
Yeah, I can bring it next month as a
Yeah.
review, as just a renumbering.
Yep. Thank you.
Then the next one is 4171. I think with this one, we need to wait till we bring 406 forward before we consider deleting that. And then, wait, yeah, and then there's a form with that we'll have to look at when we go to 406. And then our final one is 4175, contracted services and stipends. This was another one that I'm just not sure yet and may need to do more research before we, because I'm not sure if all stipends are covered in all bargaining units or not.
Okay, so we'll keep that one. Any questions, Member Michaelsell?
Assistant Superintendent Bonds, what are some situations where in point 2 of this policy, when community members or volunteers are paid stipends for participation at meetings where students and teachers of the school district are not present? Like, what would an example of that be? Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
No, I cannot. That's why,
Okay.
as I'm thinking about it, I cannot think of a time that has happened here, in at least the 6 years I've been here, or even anything that I could probably think I would support. So, no, I'm not aware that it happens. However,
I mean, I agree with, later on in the policy, talking about consultant contracts, coming before the human resources and business services and needing to be, reviewed by the school board. That all makes perfect sense. And is covered, I'm sure, and we have other policies in which that would be clearly identified. But that point 2, where it also brings very specific, amounts of stipends that would be paid, doesn't seem like that's relevant to the current practice that I'm aware of the district participating in.
that's correct. And that's what, yeah. So parts we definitely would want to have codified. Others are antiquated or just something we don't do. So it needs to either be changed and/or removed entirely.
In point 1, we have in our, at least in our teachers' contracts, people working outside of regular hours, like whether it's on curriculum or in other TOSA positions. So, I mean, the majority of this is elsewhere except for that point 2.
Well, and like you both said, I think that's outdated. I think they might have done that in 1999, but I wouldn't say that it's our current practice. So if I'm hearing what you're saying, if everything else is covered and we don't do that anymore, maybe it is okay to delete this policy.
Member Lofold?
I agree with what Patty puts out there with, the fact that it is outdated. Many of these items are covered, so deleting is, something that, I would support as well. I think sometimes the hesitancy we all have is that, we don't know if there's a need for it, so we kind of hang on to it till we know, but I really think a lot of the contractual languages are all not always in policy, they're in contractual arrangements. I think about, there's many people that help our buildings and capacities and get a stipend, and it's kind of outlined in a contractual area. But then I want to hold on to this because this could be, maybe there is something we have to create, like, Member Mike Sell and Member Loeffler Kemp, you're good at looking at, what possible policy in the 400 series that MSBA might have that we don't have, that might cover some of this in a more complete way and updated way. I don't know, so you might want to hang on to it because it would give us the need to relook at that.
Yeah,
I do think it's covered.
and what kind of comes to mind with number 2 for me is just thinking about when we approve contracts and that, a variety of them, I don't know if there's consistency in what outside community contractors are being paid. And it seems like sometimes there's a lot of variance with, and through different funds that I know are being used in the district. So I guess I would want to explore that a little bit more. Like, who decides?
Sorry about that. Do you want to explore it more before deleting this one, or do you want to delete this one and then come up with a new one that is more relevant and having more consistency to date?
Member Lofold, or Member Michaelsell?
I'm comfortable deleting it because, especially when it comes to point 2, it doesn't match our current practice. And it drives me crazy if our current practice is not matching our policy. So And it seems as though there's some kind of standard that's been set, whether it's in human resources or within our different departments, when outside contractors are brought in to participate in meetings where students and teachers aren't present. And so having those conversations with those different groups to get everyone on the same page, if there needs to be, that needs to happen, I feel like should happen after the fact, because it seems as though there's already something in motion right now. So I'm comfortable deleting it, but I can also be, I'm look forward to having more discussion if necessary.
I guess I'd like to better understand what we have out there, particularly around contracted services, before deleting, even though I understand what you're saying, Member Michael. Member Loeffel?
I was gonna support what Member Micel says, but again, I don't mind it, but it isn't a policy. I don't think it's gonna solve the problem that we think it might by giving clear direction to what we pay contracted services and stipends. It's not. And so I would rather make a note that we need some, or do you? I mean, do you need to policy this? Because as soon as you I don't know. There's so many other contracted services and places where stipends are given, and it's at the discretion of an activities director or or another administrator within their building that know what, if they've got funds for that. So sometimes I think a policy might not be appropriate for some of these services. So I think I'd rather delete the policy and then have our administration and our HR, when we've got the staff, to really look into the topic of this policy. And with that, I'm really late in my appointments here in my travel, so I'm going to be leaving the meeting, but I'm fine with whatever direction the policy committee wants to go in for.
I guess I would like us to keep it and explore it, just like some of the other policies that we're keeping and exploring, because we need more information.
Okay. And then that concludes policies to be considered.
Thank you so much. Would you be so willing to put that little sheet, that was really helpful, that you, just listing which ones we're deleting for sure and which ones we're not.
Yep, and I'll do the same thing I did last time, is I'll go back into the agenda, and the ones that we're deleting, I'll put the strikeouts in there, so then the public will be able to see which ones we decided to delete as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I know you hear it often, Patty, but, just thank you for all your work on this. I mean, you do dive into it, and so it is truly appreciated, and the work is not, has not gone unnoticed, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so again, all of this will be on the consent agenda at our November 18th meeting. Thank you so much.